St. Louis Syndicate fans, welcome. I'm Nate. He's Brandon. We are the St. Louis Syndicate here on Sandman Nation. We're coming to you live from St. Louis, Missouri. Former Brent Musburger comment. You're looking live at the Arch, downtown St. Louis, Missouri. No, we're gonna cover the former Cardinals division. And now, I mean, that was a long time ago for you
Yeah.
old guys out there like that, but the NFC East, which is one of the toughest divisions in football, hard to win. I mean, every year there's a different team that comes out of this division. Why do I feel like you're looking at me like you're so full of shit? All right, so just so the Cowboys are here, just to be clear, I will be covering the Cowboys. We're going to talk about this team and how they're going to just suck it up again this year. But we're going to start first with Brandon and the lowest record team in the NFC East, and that would be those New York Football Giants. What do you got,
Yes.
man?
We've got the New York Giants. The Giants are where did we end last year? Let me grab this real quick. 4-3.
4 and
After having
3.
all that excitement, we got Dart, we got Scadaboo. We had Neighbors for a little while. He got hurt. Scadaboo ended up getting hurt. They ended up losing 9 games dead in the middle of the season.
Yeah.
In a row, and pretty much sank their shot at going anywhere. So going into this year, Vegas is putting them at 7.5.
Okay.
So picking up potentially 3.5 wins. It's shaded a little bit to the under right now, but not much. And it hasn't moved since open. So it seems like everybody's kind of waiting to see, get to the draft, see where everybody ends up here before anybody takes any sort of real position on them.
Okay.
They finished up the year 22nd best team, fairly balanced, first best offense, 24th best defense, and went out there and got themselves a new coach. Harbaugh, who we talked about in the last episode, leaves Baltimore, makes his way up the turnpike, and heads to good old New Jersey, technically, to share the stadium with the good old Jets. So far, he brought Isaiah Likely and Patrick Ricard with him. They've went out and they've picked up Tremaine Edmonds, Greg Newsome II, Darnell Mooney, got themselves a new kicker and a punter, grabbed Calvin Austin III, and have started to turn that roster over, presumably to his likings.
I like
Bring
the
in a new
Tremaine
coach.
Edmonds.
Yeah, especially, with a guy like Harbaugh who, hasn't jumped around, seems to be the kind of guy that sets up shop, gets a team in his liking, and then runs with it. I have to imagine that this much movement, especially, at some of the ancillary positions, to go out there and take your fullback that you had in Baltimore and bring him up to New York with you, and he's going out and get a new kicker and a punter, seems like that he's at least got a plan for the types of players that he wants on his team.
That
But
tells me,
hopefully, yeah,
yeah, it tells me, I mean, right off the bat, he trusts this Ricard to block for his young quarterback. He trusts this Ricard to lead his young running back through the hole. He
yeah.
needs a safety net for his young quarterback, and he feels like Isaiah Likely can fit the bill. I hate the Giants. I love how he's starting this already because he's doing the right things for what they've got, man. It's unbelievable to think about that they're going to have, Jalen Hyatt, Malik Neighbors, Darius Slayton running around out there with Isaiah Likely in the mix now, with guys like Darnell Mooney coming in and Calvin Austin III coming in, and god dang, this Dart is gonna have some tools, and they still have Jameis behind him, who's a
Yeah.
solid kind of team guy, glue
Uh-huh.
guy that guys like.
Yeah.
Um, I I'm telling you, he knows exactly what it's gonna take. You're gonna see a lot of running game, right? You're gonna see a lot of play action off that run. You're gonna see likely wide open running wide open and Jackson Dart getting the hound out of his ball or the ball out of his hands very quickly. And so it's gonna lead to less sacks.
Yeah.
And I'm pissed because they're
And it
gonna be
makes
good.
me think that Harbaugh likes Dart
Yeah.
for him to go up there and, because look, we all he's an exciting player to watch, but part of what comes with excitement is, hey, maybe I like to lead with my head when I'm scrambling, crazy shit like that. So it leads me to believe that Harbaugh thinks we can rein that in and we can point that in a more productive direction.
Yeah.
If he's going to come in here and just kind of form around the edges and go, who do I bring in to bolster the offense and the defense? And it makes me think that, okay, then we're going to have a plan here. And so, interestingly enough, they've got the fifth pick. So they need help on both sides of the ball. It seems like this is one of the spots where Intel is finally starting to make its way out into the world. And this is the first place that I've seen that, is at least saying that they may be focusing on grabbing Love.
I know.
So interesting, pick. It obviously says something about what they think about Scadaboo, that he probably can't be the bell cow back, that, he may be a change of pace sort of guy, battering ram, and that there's some sort of use for what should be a game changing running back added to this suite of skill players on the offensive side. That's an interesting thing to look at. Now, obviously, they have the ability at number 5 to grab all kinds of stuff here that they still need. They obviously need all kinds of defensive stuff. They obviously need the same sort of stuff that we've been talking about basically every team. You
Yeah.
can always use lines on both sides of the ball. But it does seem like this is one of the first places where it seems like there's reporting to go along with the guys that are doing analysis to go, here's what the team should take, that there's actually some stuff filtering out to go, here's what they're at least telling some people, or some people inside the organization are telling some people, that they are focused in on a singular player. So, they were the ones, not Harbaugh and his administration, but a previous one that went, hey, we'll go ahead and we'll reach for Saquon. I guess, that probably worked out okay.
Yeah.
It's not like, again, you hope you have all of your stuff in place and then you add the running back on top of it. This is probably getting the cart a little bit before the horse. But if they think, hey, we're, another year, just a year or so away, and we can plug these holes and we can take both the offense and defense with some better coaching and elevate them, then maybe this is the time to take the shot. So I think that's probably where we end up at. It doesn't really seem like one of the 4 teams in front of them have a high chance of going the direction. So unless somebody decides that they want to trade up, which would be wild to trade up for a running back.
Yeah. I
It,
don't see that happening.
yeah, it kind of seems like it's going to fall in their lap, and it's just whether they pull the trigger or not on it. So,
Yeah.
I think that's where we end up, landing. Do
Well,
you have any thoughts about your nemesis here?
there's not a lot of running backs in the draft available. That's one thing that
No.
hell, 2 of them are from Notre Dame. I feel like for a guy like Harbaugh to come in and take Jeremiah Love, can I see him do it? Yes. I think he would feel it's a reach though, because one thing that I've read, and now to your point though, I mean, we've seen Kuiper, McShay, and several others. They seem to think that if Love falls here, it's going to be hard for Harbaugh to pass on him.
Yeah.
But I can also see the play for Caleb Downs. He's that safety that mimics Hamilton and Ed Reed that he needs in the back of that defense. It would be amazingly special if he got there because he would be exactly what that defense needed. But I've also seen that Sonny Styles picked out of here, pairing him up with the Tremaine Edmonds and having two backers that could really do some damage.
Look, either one of those would be,
I think better than
my
Love for
10,000,
he
but
needs.
is that, I think if it was me and I had a guy that was going to be at least, he's on track to be healthy. He wants the ball. You have new leadership in place. Me, I would go, let me bolster something else and see what happens with a full season of letting you run out there. If it doesn't work, it's just so risky with running back. They can change the game, but they also can just be interchangeable. If you have an offensive line that can open up holes, you can have guys that can just get you the couple of yards you need that opens up your passing game. You know, I
So
it seems like that's the reporting, but you
I
hope that their mind changes a little bit.
I think they're gonna go Sonny Styles. And here's why. On their roster right now, they have Cam Scatterbo, Tyrone Tracy Jr., Devin Singletary, Eric Gray, and Dante Miller in the running back positions. So they're three deep. Let's throw away Miller and Gray.
Yeah.
Singletary, Tracy, and Scatterbo are serviceable to run a play action offense, with Scatterbo potentially being a star in the NFL. At safety, they've got Tyler Nubbin and Javon Holland, and there's no and behind it he brought in two safeties, one from Baltimore, Darius Washington, and a free agent from San Francisco and Jason Pennick, and another one, Elijah Campbell. So he is free agent safeties out the wazoo. So
Yeah.
while Caleb Downs, I think, would be a great play here, he's already addressing that. So that tells me that his linebackers, he brought in Tremaine Edmonds. Their backups are Darius Masu, Zaire Barnes, and Micah McFadden on the will. I could slot McFadden back as a backup and put Sonny Styles in there next to Tremaine Edmonds. And I think that defense had effectively been bolstered to a sound unit he could deal with. So if I'm just looking at the roster as a whole, just trying to say, all right, if I'm going to predict what falls, they need that because their offensive line, they've got John Runyon, Andrew Thomas, John Michael Schmitz, younger guys. Still, they could use obviously everybody. We always say they always need linemen,
Uh
but I
huh.
think they need. I think Harbaugh needs a defense. He's got to contend with Dak Prescott. He's got to contend with Saquon and Hurts. He's got to contend with Jalen Daniels,
Jaden.
Jaden. Sorry, he needs
Yeah.
backers. I really think the smart play here is that Sonny Styles out of Ohio State. Yeah, we'll
I
see.
I like it. Either one of those defensive options for the way that Harbaugh tends to coach.
Yeah,
Unless he's going in and going, hey, the guys that I'm picking up from other places gives me what I want on the field, and then I'm going to take longer shots deeper in the draft. That that could be possible, but to me, I my thought process would be how fast can I get an elite defense on the field and then see what I can build with this offense. And then going into next year, know, okay, here's what didn't quite mesh
yeah.
with this new leadership over top of it. and then fix it, whether it's
Well,
through free agency or
yeah,
the
and who
draft.
doesn't say, "I wanna go be a running back for Harbaugh?" Who's
Right.
to say somebody doesn't wanna
Been
do
very
that?
successful over the years. Now you're in New York
Yeah,
instead of in Baltimore. Yeah. So, for me, that little bit of reporting is out there, but I like the idea that you came with the defensive players
just looking
considerably
at it. I don't
better.
know if it's right,
Yeah.
wrong, or indifferent, dude. It's kind of it's a thought, and I like it, so we'll roll with it.
Yeah.
Alright, well, that's the Giants, and let me tell you, as much as I dislike the Giants because they are a rival of the Cowboys, I have a really difficult time rooting against Jackson Dart and Cam Scadaboo because I think they're football dudes, and I like football dudes.
Yeah.
And I like Harbaugh. He's a football dude. I kinda am rooting for the Giants under the covers. If the Cowboys can't win, let's see if the Giants can do something with these young kids and have some fun with it.
Yeah. No, that's a very level-headed way of looking at it
It's kind
because
of fun, man.
they're clearly fun as far as they can stay healthy.
Healthy.
They just happen to play for a team that, most people don't like. They're kinda one of those old school teams that, has ended up being a rival of a bunch of teams when it comes
Yeah,
down to it. So,
absolutely.
they have a ton of detractors, but they went out and got some fun guys that want to, they wanna bang heads.
Yeah. Absolutely. Totally agree. Let's bounce over to my Cowboys who finished 7-9. Oh, I meant to ask you, what was our over under number on the Giants?
7.5.
That's a
I
good
think I'm gonna
number.
go over on that.
That's a good number. That's a good number.
Yeah.
I like the over.
It's kind of a
I like parlaying that one potentially with the Bengals under. Trying to
sure,
get a
yeah.
few odds there. So I like that. We'll keep an eye on that. So Cowboys, they finished the season 7-9-1. Disappointing season from the get-go for the Cowboys. Very, very common season for Cowboys fans. Expect a lot, come back with a little.
Oh, come on. You guys usually make it to the playoffs and then choke.
Uh, well, that's a very Chad comment of you to note. I will say I'm glad I was gonna say I was glad I have you on here instead of Chad for this particular episode, but beginning to question if he's feeding you lines. Anyway,
Oh, no.
at 8.5 for the over under, I don't have a definitive position on this because I could see the Cowboys winning 8 and I could see them winning 10. It just depends on how they gel. I love what Schottenheimer did with them last year. I was very much, if you watched this podcast last year, I was very, very angry about the Schottenheimer hire. I own that. I did not feel it was the right hire. In hindsight, obviously they saw something behind the scenes that I didn't. This is a 7-9 team that had more energy than any team McCarthy had during his era when he was running out 11 and 12 win seasons.
Yeah.
They played passionately, and that to me is a foundational aspect that can be done. They bought in behind Dak. They franchise tagged Pickens, which is a good move in my opinion because it really allows a dynamic threat to that offense. Now the Cowboys could stand a running back bad. Jerry knows that. While he's got, can't even say his name. I want to say Williams. Yeah,
Yeah.
Williams.
Devontae.
They signed Devontae again. He's fine. He handled himself well. Having a guy like Love would be tremendous. That's the kind of guy that Jerry would trade up for because he's a moron. That is something that he would do. Instead, we need to build this defense to give ourselves a chance in these games. We lost a lot when we gave up Micah, but it was proven to be probably the right thing to do with the draft capital we received, with the fact that Micah is probably starting the slide of an injured player. He started with the Cowboys a little bit. Now he's doing it with the Packers. He's going to be injured a little bit more. They must have seen something. The doctors might have seen something. I don't know, but it was a good move. Picking up Clark was a good move. The Cowboys in their free agency have done, honestly, very little this offseason, in my opinion, but that's speaking from a Cowboys fan. But they do have a big key in the Rashawn Gary pickup out of Green Bay. Pairing Gary and Clark together again is going to be good. I like seeing that they've tried to do some things defensively. It's important that they've added a few players like Jalen Thompson, Cole Durant, and even at defensive end, they picked up a couple guys, but they need defense. Defense, defense, defense. So the Cowboys have 2 picks in the first round, 12 and 20. The Cowboys should have given up one of those picks for Max Crosby. Whether his physical comes back healthy or not, they'll get him healthy. Unless it's detrimental, Max Crosby is worth every bit of a 12 or a 20, in my opinion. And they just didn't do it. And that's, we'll see that Jerry may prove me right again, like with a Micah trade.
Yeah.
That felt like a move we needed to make for a team that needs rushers, inside backers, corners, and depth on the edge. And of course, everybody needs an O lineman. I do think at the 12th pick, getting a guy like Reuben Bain Jr. would be a coup at this point because all the draft boards seem to have him going much earlier. I was, as a Cowboy fan, I'm hopeful that he would fall to us, but I do not think he's going to. Keldrick Falk at Auburn could fall to that point. Some of the pundits have us looking at Jermod McCoy, actually both McShay and what's his name? Uh,
Kuiper.
Kuiper have Jermod McCoy on the page. So I don't know. That's kind of where they're looking at corner there. I don't love it necessarily. I would much rather see them try to stay defensively. Kendrick Falk at that point would be a great pickup if we could get him there. I hate to say it, Brandon, but if we cannot get the kind of guy we need, like a Caleb Downs, a Kendrick Falk, or a Reuben Bain Jr., at that 12 hole, there's not a lot between, that as I'm looking at some of the players listed on the board after that, you wide receiver, Spencer Fano wouldn't be a bad offensive tackle to have. I'm really thinking this is where they need to maybe stretch and go for that tight end out of Oregon. Kenyon Sadiq. I mean, honestly, if you've lost all those guys, if those guys go off the board that you wanted, right?
Yeah.
Bain's gone, Styles is gone, Bailey's gone, Downs is gone, McCoy's gone. Okay, what are we going to do here? Let's go for the best athlete that can help us, and that might be Sadiq. Now,
Sadiq.
that's a Cowboys fan speaking.
Get another toy for Dak.
Well, that might be a reach. It'd be a good toy for Dak, but we can come back later in the pick and pick up, another edge if we need to. We've got 2 picks there. Some areas seem to think that I wouldn't be surprised if Jerry doesn't use one of the 2 picks on a toy for Dak and one of them on defense. And then he does have a tendency to like to build his corners out of the second and third rounds, which I don't love. We never really get a star that way. That's how we get guys like Diggs. They come in the second and the third round, and
Yeah.
they do a nice job. But we need some stars on the defense to step up and help this offense we've got, and they need to be cheap stars. They need to be rookies. They need to be cheap, and they need to come in hot. So we're looking. Cowboys got to have backers, corners, and edge. All right, I've talked enough. What are your thoughts on the Cowboys? Because it's probably way more intelligent than my cowboy bumbling ramblings.
Well, no, I mean, you know this way deeper than 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 I know any of the teams because I not rooting for any of them. I don't have that level of depth. I know that, the offense worked quite well last year. And the defense was where they got hung up. And they couldn't, they couldn't get off the field when they needed to. So, your kind of position at like, hey, let's get an edge guy. Let's get a cornerback. Like, let's get some high end, player. It seems to me like that makes a ton of sense. And, again, the upside and the downside to Jerry is that he's completely fine with doing wild shit.
Yeah.
So, if they look at something like Bain and they go, hey, we really want this guy, you have 2 picks in the first round. Go get him.
Yeah.
Like you have those 2 picks. It's exactly what he said when he traded Micah. He goes, now I got a bunch of picks. I can go do some stuff.
Yeah.
And so, that's something that kind of sits in the back of my head that like if what when we're looking at it and we're looking at the way that they're ranking these guys, that Ruben Bain is probably more like a top 5, top 6 sort of player, well, then you have these 2 picks. Go find one of these teams that isn't really in love with one of these top dozen picks and go get their pick. Let them trade back and grab 2 guys late in the round, trade for a top 6 pick and grab their, second round pick or something like that. And then let them grab 2 guys that they like and go get Bane if that's who their leadership likes. You
Yeah.
might as well be aggressive. When you have an offense like this, my argument would be now's the time.
Jerry's not getting any younger.
Neither is that Dak.
No.
So, and Pickens, you're only going to hold him together mentally for so many seasons.
Yeah. Year 2 tops.
So, you need to strike while the iron's hot. So, I think it's a great idea if you can look at an edge that is a game changer and go, we're just going to go get him.
Yeah.
And then we have a plan and get some cornerbacks in the third and the fourth and, whatever, where he likes to grab them.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you hit. Trust yourself, take a shot, and go make it happen. So, that's always, I get it that with a lot of these teams, you have layers of guys that are all trying to keep their jobs.
That's right.
So you can only be so wild when you would like to keep getting paychecks.
Yeah.
But when you're Jerry and you own and you're the GM and you just nobody gets to take your check away from you. So you
Right.
can just go, hey, this is what we're doing.
Right.
And somebody speak up and see if you keep your job. Like, it's kind of that old Al Davis model that like I pay for everything. This is what we're doing,
Right.
sort of thing. And so, you know, you might as well take a shot at being right again. So, hopefully he's got a strong opinion and they'll do something aggressive that will be fun to watch the first night, up on the board.
Yeah. That would be awesome. Because if it's not the first night fun, then the season's going to just go downhill from there.
Look, to be that high outside of injuries, there's nothing that doesn't point towards the offense going and doing the same kinds of things that they do last year again. Which is why when you start looking at this 8.5, you go, why wouldn't I think that we're going to get up and over that?
You would think, right? The over should
But
be screaming here, but
again, you have to price in the fact that CD gets banged up sometimes. Pickens could just decide he wants to fist fight somebody. Like
he could go DK Metcalf and punch a guy in the stadium.
he could, or he could be locked in, and it could be the craziest shit we've seen in years of Dak having 2 guys that are just healthy and focused on scoring touchdowns, and it could be just a problem every game for every team that doesn't have an elite defensive backfield.
Yeah.
And, you only need so much help on defense if you can truly move the ball that way. So go get your guy, make it so that, hey, when we get up, we're going to let somebody pin their ears back and try to destroy whatever quarterback's playing across the field from them.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Well, hey, we beat that dead horse to death. How about we talk about
Yeah.
somebody who's another dire rival of those Cowboys? The
Yes.
Washington Red Commanders.
The
So
football
we
team.
got Dan Quinn out here, who's a former Cowboys assistant. Dude, they've made a
Yeah.
lot of moves. What do you got?
Yeah. So we finished up the season 5-12. Kind of blew the entire season with Jaden Daniels getting hurt. I mean, when it comes down to it, you lose a quarterback like that. After having a legitimate shot to make their way through the playoffs in 24 and came up short. You run a bunch of rookies out there and that sort of thing happens. And then you fall flat on your nose the second you're off of injuries. We kind of, we have another one of these situations where you're looking down the board and you're going, man, we've got some teams in the top half of the draft that we didn't expect to be there. And Washington's one of them, having the seventh pick. Vegas, though, is really only giving them a little. They're putting them at 7.5 for the over under, putting them the same place the Giants are. So they are in no way are going, hey, I think they're going to overperform, get back to where they were in 2014 or 2024, um, still be under 500. So it'll be interesting to see. They went through the eighth hardest schedule last year. They ended as the 21st best team. Pretty even again, 22nd offense, 23rd defense.
Yeah.
And then they've went out here and they've grabbed a bunch of defense.
A lot of defense.
Yeah, Owe, Chinal, Settle Jr.
I like the pickup, man. That's a nice one.
Huh?
It was good for the Chiefs.
Yeah. Um, they got a little bit of, but Rashad White and Van Jefferson to kind of round out, backup running backs, backup wide receivers, that sort of thing. They lost Marshawn Lattimore, Chris Rodriguez, Jonathan Jones, Jacob Martin. Those guys have moved on. And so now, kind of sitting here with the seventh pick, you start looking at probably that same sort of defense. This is probably a defense situation. You know, um, we were talking about Sonny Styles. This is kind of the position that, some think that he's going to fall into. You've got David Bailey right there on the edge, Mansour Delaney, Caleb Downs, kind of that whole you have that whole stack of defensive players right there for them to look at. And realistically, if Love doesn't go to the Giants,
Yeah.
this is kind of the next team down that could grab him.
I really feel like that'd be a great spot for him too.
Pair him with Jaden Daniels. So I think Washington's going to end up with a lot of variability pretty early in the draft. Normally, your top 10, you're kind of going, here's about where everybody's going to fall. But because of the way that this is stacked, where some lower value positions are being so highly rated going into this draft that you may get a mix of any one team deciding, well, that's my top guy on my board and he's still there. So
Yeah.
I'm going to grab him. So I think, those four defensive guys, I think, no matter how you want to spin it, they could be looking at any one of those four. I haven't seen any reporting that says like they're necessarily leaning towards one over the next, but they're kind of all right there. And again, this is a Washington thing to do.
Yeah.
I know that Quinn is kind of more of a balanced, conservative sort of guy, but Washington, fairly new owner, building a new stadium. Let me get another huge name to stand there next to Jaden Daniels.
Sell some jerseys.
Yeah, this is one of those things that kind of get highlighted. So I wouldn't be surprised. I would say if he's there, I would say this is where Love ends up.
Yeah.
If he doesn't get grabbed before this is probably as far as he falls.
So I was just reading um some so Love is by far the right play if he falls because they have a gap in their running back. Their running back is weak.
Yeah.
But listen listen to these stats. Could you imagine this guy being the anchor of the Commanders defense? Sonny Styles is 6'5", 244, and has an 81-inch wingspan and 10-inch hands. He's the biggest backer at the combine. He ran the fastest 10-yard split and tied Arvell Reese for the fastest 40 with the most explosive jumps at 43. This is like LeVar Arrington type numbers. That guy just is going to, based on physical specimen alone and the fact that he's played for a national champion, he's got winning pedigree. He can anchor many a defense. See, that's a guy that needs to go to Cleveland. That's a guy that Harbaugh needs to anchor with the Giants.
Uh-huh.
So, but if he falls to the Commanders and it's Sonny Styles or Jeremiah Love, and you're Dan Quinn, who's defensive minded, who do you take? Do you take the guy that
Well,
sells the jersey? Do you take the guys that could absolutely eat Dak Prescott and maybe the guy who's finally a defensive linebacker who's better than Jalen Hurts at the tush push?
I would guess that Quinn is going to be arguing for his defensive guy. It's just
Totally.
whether if organizationally, if he has the pull necessary to, get out ahead of the organization saying we have a shot at this, weapon that's known is the top, rated player in the draft, and we could bring him to this team. Um, he may just not have enough pull to go, we need to stick with defense.
Yeah. No, this guy's yeah, I'll be curious to see how this plays out because there's some really talented players in this draft, and how do they fit the systems is going to be critical. Like I look at all the guys in the top 5, and I mean, a lot of the teams we've talked about today and in our last cast, when we talk about the Giants, the Commanders, the Browns, they're all drafting right there. The Bengals, the Cowboys, these
Mhm.
teams are all drafting next to each other. They're
Yeah.
all competing for the same players. And honestly, most of them need all of them. So all of them are going to
Well,
get
yeah.
somebody that's going to help them, hopefully.
Well, and it's such a especially on the defensive side, the defensive strategies have opened up so much to go, you can already have a linebacker you really like
Yeah.
and go, this guy's game changing. We'll bring him in too.
Yeah.
Like, unless they do exactly the same thing and you go, look, this is just a car. Like, it's one thing to go, I have a quarterback, I have a running back, I have 2 wide receivers, I have a left tackle, I have a tight end, but everybody else is kind of, unless you have 5 defensive backs that you go, all 5 of these guys need to get on the field. Well, then if the best player on the board is a defensive back, you start going, well, it just makes my defensive backs better.
Yeah.
If I can take a guy that's rated a 70 and I got a bunch of upper 80s guys and then I can grab a 90, well, that 70 guy needs to go be a nickel. It's over.
Yeah.
You get to play, a quarter of the game. So, that's what makes it, in my mind, not being a complete X's and O's guy to go, look, you need playmakers on the field. We watch it, every game that, yeah, you can build a strategy and go, here's exactly what I want different players to do. But the reality is the better that these coaches on up through the leadership ladder can go, we're going to build around the talent that we can get our hands on,
Yeah.
the better the teams are going to play. So, yeah, you're right. Like, all of these guys are packed into this area where there is just this half dozen defensive players that goes, you guys are going to have to work it out in order of your draft picks because it just depends on what you guys love internally
Yeah.
and in what order.
So I think it's very fascinating how they're all packed in. And then we go look at the team who is the perennial division champ, and they're sitting at an 11-6 record, and their over unders at a 10.5. which is probably the right number for them. 10's probably good with the Eagles.
Yeah.
But they lost a lot, dude. They lost Jalen Phillips. They lost to Nakobe Dean. They lost to Aziz Ojulari. I mean, those are big losses all to the defense. That
Yeah.
defense kind of held them together. They need D-line and O-line help because Lane Johnson's going to be retiring soon. They've got to figure out how to replace that. Just a couple years ago, they lost Kelsey. They also lost their safety, Reed Blankenship, to the Texans, which I don't know if I realized that at the time we were reviewing the Texans, but that just makes that defense even stronger.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at the Eagles and I'm like, I just don't see how they've got 11 wins in them anywhere. I mean, this is a team
Well,
that they took a half a step back last year after the Super Bowl, and I feel like after these losses, they're going to take another half a step back because they are also in that bad spot in teams. Man, you talk about NFL draft purgatory. Drafting 19 to 26 or 25 is terrible. It's just,
uh-huh.
you just are hung up with the guys who aren't good enough to be in the top 15 and the guys who you really don't want to pay what they're going to command because they probably should be 35 through 42. And it's,
Yeah.
you're kind of overpaying at this point. So anybody drafting from like 20 to 26, 27 is overpaying. Now, because I think a lot of these teams have figured out that, you know, late round draft picks, 27, 28, 29, 30, they can slot almost as early second rounders from a payment scale. It's not
Yeah.
as bad, but that middle group there, I bet if we looked historically at the players drafted from 20 to 30 or 20 to 28, I bet they just don't turn out at the same frequency. Now, they're good, but that's where people reach. They reach for guys in that area.
When I think, you already have those are the stronger teams in most cases.
Yeah.
So you are kind of reaching because you have fewer holes.
Yeah.
You go like, "Oh, I do need to fit a guy in right here. So let me take the best one of those
Yeah.
that I've got on my board because hey, it'll help me theoretically put this puzzle together."
Yeah.
Instead of, again, in my mind, going, who's the best player that we have on the board?
Yeah.
And let's bring him in and let's figure out how to make them fit. Let's give them something to do being the best player we can get our hands on. So yeah, it is. I would imagine that back third of the first round, you just run this spot where you go, oh, it's a it's a big enough name that everybody hears. It goes, oh, okay, I remember
Yeah.
that guy. And then he comes in, and then you kind of go, huh, yeah,
Well,
yeah, he was good in college,
there's a lot
and
of
then
that.
he didn't really convert, and so now
To
here
me,
we go.
this has to be historically, if I'm looking at the draft, which I've been looking at this for freaking 40 years. But if I'm looking at this draft, you should always take offensive linemen in those ranges. Offensive linemen, just if they're that high, they're not going to screw up. They're not going to fail you unless they're dumb. Don't go dumb guys. Go
Yeah,
smart offensive linemen. Guys that are high IQ, guys who you can keep for 4 or 5 years and pay them well, but not break you. Don't reach for that. This is where, like teams want to reach for that running back. They probably should be drafted at 36, but
uh-huh.
they draft him at 22 and he just never quite pans out. He's okay. He's okay, but he's not that guy. Teams that are perennial in this, though, they struggle. Bills are a prime example. As I'm sitting here kind of looking at my board, they're always
Yeah,
drafting around 26, 27, 28, but they're never getting a player who can help Allen win. They're getting guys who just kind of plug a hole from somebody they lost. They're not getting a dynamic player. And so I wonder, should teams who are into that purgatory, Eagles are a prime example, Bills are another one, and the Bears have to guard against it, as I said, see them sitting there at 25. The Niners are perennial in that group. The Chiefs have kind of been in it, and the Chiefs have suffered from it too.
Uh-huh.
Do they need to figure out how to package their pick with a semi-star and try to move up with a team that needs help? So like, try to like the Chiefs, if I was the Chiefs, I would have tried to figure out the Rams have the 13th pick. I would have tried to trade up into that pick, but I think they did that already with the 9 pick.
Yeah.
They traded up. So that was a good move. They traded a player and a pick and moved up. That's what these teams need to do to try to get some talent. So a team like the Eagles, if they want to improve themselves and they want to move up into like let's say they want to move up into a pick. A team like the Dolphins need more than what they're going to be able to draft at 11. So can you package them 2 picks and a player for a team like the Bills to go up and get a difference maker like a Caleb Downs or a Fano, or maybe if Carnell Tate fell, anything to help Allen, because what they're going to have at 27 is just not good.
Yeah. Well, and the
I know I
Phillies
digress a
are
little bit off the Eagles, but
no,
that's the
but
predicament the Eagles are in
the
also.
Eagles famously have a player to trade.
Yeah.
Brown wants out of there so bad that he's bringing his novels out to the sideline to read. Like,
Yeah.
so, that seems like a great time to go, hey, let's extract some value from this and see if we can get up the board to go reach and grab like whatever we truly think is a player that we need.
Yeah. Well, you know what they need to do? They need to go to 15. They need to go to 15 and trade the Bucks. The Bucks need Brown and a draft pick because they just lost Mike Evans. They have
Uh,
Mbuka. They could use Brown and a draft pick, move back, and still pick up an edge rusher that they need. And a team like the Eagles could move up and get maybe a little bit more of a dynamic player to help them replace. Damn, they lost so much. Granted, I'm happy they lost so much, but they lost a lot.
yeah,
And when they were drafting big with Phillips and Nakobe Dean, those guys out of Georgia, I mean, they had some players. I
yeah,
don't know. That's my
yeah,
2 cents. I think the Eagles, the Bills are teams that need to trade up. I think the Bears are a couple players away from being deep playoff contenders. I think if they could trade up, that would be an okay move for them. Yeah, I think that's kind of, I don't know if anybody else could trade up. Maybe the Patriots need to.
yeah. And that's not really the Pat sort of thing.
Yeah, that's not what they do. They don't trade up, they trade back.
Yeah, they trade out. And it kind of speaks to what you were talking about that these picks end up being a problem. So historically, Belichick just went, I'll just get out of them then.
Yeah,
I'll just extract some more value. I'll move back. I'll take a couple of shots on mid level guys and not take one shot reaching for somebody here that's good, but not elite.
yeah. It's a numbers game. Do you want to own one rental property that makes you $500 a month, or do you want to own 7 that make you $100 a month?
Yeah.
Well, that's what Belichick's doing. He's extracting value in
Yeah.
numbers. That's
Yeah.
what these guys have to do. Yeah, can you
Yeah.
get one hit for 500 a month? Yeah, but is that going to pay you the top dollar for the long haul? Probably not. It's fascinating, dude. I'm telling you. It's fascinating.
Yeah. Especially this back half of the grouping here. There are some interesting teams mixed in here.
Yeah. The teams need help. They've had to trade in and out of things. Like the Cowboys are back in there, the Browns are back in there, the Dolphins are back in there. So there's going to be some players that need to be taken. You've also have teams like the Jets and the Cardinals who need a lot of help, as I sit here and scan through the board, do you think the Cardinals who need a quarterback would go get a guy like Ty Simpson by trading back up into the first round with somebody like maybe the Patriots if he's available still? And they don't think they would get him. Maybe they think they need to get in front of the Jets because say the Jets are, I'm looking at 32 being the Seahawks. That means 33 is the Raiders, 34 is the Jets, 35 is the Cardinals. Do the Cardinals try to trade with somebody like the Patriots or the Seahawks to go up and get Ty Simpson in front of the Jets? I mean, how fun would that be?
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting. It's one of those things. Like, you don't know internally to these teams where they think their heads at. Like for me, I don't want Arizona to go pick up any of these quarterbacks because I don't think they have the people in place to train the quarterbacks.
No.
So I'd rather you just leave these guys alone and let some teams that actually know how to train a quarterback and let them take a shot with some of these guys
Yeah. I
and
like
see
that
if we can,
philosophy.
turn some of these, bottom four kind of top quarterbacks into something
Yeah.
instead of just reaching for a team that is just chewing up quarterbacks
Right.
and spitting them out. Like, go get yourself a veteran, let him hold it down for a little bit, build some other pieces, and then, go get yourself a different head coach,
Right.
like kind of reset that whole thing all the way down. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if by another 3 weeks from now, if somebody that is not a very good team has talked themselves into Ty Simpson, who needs the help,
Yeah.
who, while, being a reasonably like having a reasonable amount of experience, not a ton, but
Yeah.
some, um, and having the half of the tools to be able to go get him the other half of the tools. You need some leadership to do that. And if you just throw them on Arizona, it's going to be interesting, but it's probably going to be
A shit
a
show.
tire fire. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll tell you, it's gonna be fun to watch how this plays out. The Arizona play, that's a draft day trade in my opinion. I don't see anything like
Yeah.
that. That's not gonna happen beforehand. They've got to see Simpson falling. They've got to project they think the Jets are gonna take him, which I have no reason to believe the Jets wouldn't take him in that second round first slot. That's where I see him falling to.
Yeah.
And that just depends to me, are the Cardinals happy with Gardner Minshew? Do they think he's gonna be their the way that they're going? I mean, they can say what they want about the future, but even if they had 2 quarterbacks, next year that were rookies and strong, I mean, two's better than nothing. I mean, look at Cleveland.
Infinity stones, one for every finger.
One for every finger. Got a quarterback for everybody. So, hey,
Yeah.
Brandon, that's the NFC East.
Yes.
That's a pretty good
Got
wrap
three more
up.
to go.
Yeah. We're gonna catch you guys up. We're gonna get, these 3 knocked out before the draft, and then we'll head into our draft special and hopefully, go live with you guys all during the draft, and it'll be a good time. So join us. Hope you're enjoying these. Drop us a line if you are. Check out Sandman Sports. He's got a lot going on right now. We got the March Madness. The golf's getting ready to ramp up. I know the Masters are coming. So be sure and check it
Masters.
all out. The Masters. No Tiger Woods, but the Masters will be there. So
No.
no Tiger Woods. He's going to be talking to somebody with Puka. Um,
Yeah.
all righty. Well, hey, we're the Syndicate. I'm Nate. He's Brandon. See you guys. Thank you.
Cheers.